We are entering into the third unit. This is actually about blood. What you see here is their syllabus: plasma proteins, special proteins in the blood, coagulation, and pH maintenance of the blood. In the introductory figure, what you see here is actually a picture from about the various components of the blood. You can see here the blood vessels. You know that the blood is flowing through closed vessels. Arteries are there, veins are there, and the fluid portion is actually called the plasma. The plasma consists of dissolved materials which are not indicated here. What you see here are the different cellular components. Erythrocyte is actually the RBC, and you have the basophil, monocyte, eosinophils, etc. and the lymphocytes and neutrophils, etc. They are actually the white blood cells, and also we have the platelets. In this chapter we are going to see the different proteins dissolved in plasma, and then coagulation of the blood, which is a very important property of the blood, and then we have the maintenance of pH of the blood. What are the components of plasma? Actually, what is plasma? Plasma is the fluid portion of the blood. You see in this figure, the blood consists of plasma, the fluid portion, and also the formed elements. Formed elements are RBCs, WBCs, and the platelets. Plasma is the fluid portion. What is the composition of plasma? 92% of the plasma is made up of water, while the remaining 8% is solutes. And what you see here are the different fractions of solutes. Inorganic ions are there in the form of salts. You can see them here. And the gases are there. Which are the gases? You know, oxygen is a gas being transported in the blood, and we have a carbon dioxide. Even though these gases are transported by cells, at least some of the gases are dissolved in plasma. And plasma proteins, albumins, globulins, fibrinogen, etc. You know that fibrinogen is concerned with the blood coagulation. And you have the organic nutrients, glucose and other sugars, lipids, phospholipids, amino acids, etc. are there. Nitrogenous waste materials are there, urea, ammonia, uric acid, etc. are there. And regulatory substances such as hormones and enzymes are there. And you know that blood is a transport medium. All those materials are transported in the blood. Total volume of the blood, of course, it is variable from person to person. And there is a fraction called the plasma. What is plasma? It is blood minus, blood coagulation agents. From the blood, we remove the cellular fragments, and if you remove all the cellular fragments, what is remained there is actually called a plasma. I think I told earlier, just now, I told you that it is blood minus clotting agent. That is not correct. That's actually here, it is serum. Plasma is the fluid portion of the blood. From the blood, we remove all the components, all the cellular components. What is remaining behind is called a plasma, about 55 to 60% of the blood quantity. And if the blood is withdrawn without anticoagulant and allowed to clot, after about 2 hours, a liquid portion is separated from the clot. This is called serum. Actually, serum is equal to plasma minus clotting factors, or we say blood minus clotting factors. That is what is called serum. Serum does not contain coagulation factors, because by the process of coagulation, clotting, we removed all those factors. And total protein content is 6 to 8 gram in 100 ml of blood. So if your blood is 5 liters, then how much is the total grams of protein? You try to calculate. Mainly consists of albumins and globulins. Of course, fibrinogen also are there. These are the major proteins in the blood. Of course, there are some other smaller proteins also. I mean, proteins in the smaller quantities also are there. By the way, you see, by the way, albumin is the most abundant protein in the blood. 3.5 to 5 gram in deciliter means 100 ml. While globulin is lesser. You know, globulins are actually immunoglobulins. Many of the globulins are providing us with immunity. You might have heard of antibodies. These globulins are actually antibodies. And you know that the fibrinogen is clotting factors. And almost all the plasma proteins except antibodies are synthesized in the liver. And they are proteins, they are synthesized as synthesized on polyribosomes as nascent proteins. These proteins are precipitated using salts, and fibrinogen is precipitated by 10% sodium sulfate, while globulins are precipitated by 22% sodium sulfate. What are the functions of albumin? Albumins have a very important function in maintaining the osmotic pressure of plasma. Of course, you know, salts present in the blood also have a very important role in maintaining the osmotic concentration. Apart from the salts, albumin also is important. And albumin is a transporter. It's a carrier of various hydrophobic substances. Which are the materials being carried by albumin? Bilirubin is there, non-esterified fatty acids are there, drugs are there, hormones are there, different metal ions are there. So you see, if by any means the concentration of albumin decreases in the blood, it will affect us. It will affect us seriously. And there is the buffering action for this protein albumin. Actually, all proteins have buffering capacity. Since albumin is present in the maximum volume, maximum quantity of all the proteins, we say albumin has the maximum buffering capacity of all proteins because its quantity is very high. And there is a nutritional function. All tissue cells can take up albumin by means of pinocytosis, and it is then hydrolyzed into amino acids, and these amino acids may be used as nutrients. So a very important function, nutritional function also is there. Also, you know that amino acids can be used for the formation of glucose by means of a process called gluconeogenesis. And you know, blood is a transport medium. What are the different transport proteins present in the blood? Protein, I already told you about albumin. Albumin is the most abundant protein in the blood. Apart from albumin, you have a pre-albumin or transthyretin. You know, transport of thyroid hormones. And you have RBP, retinol binding protein, carries vitamin A. Thyroxine binding protein, specific for thyroid hormones. You know that thyroxine and triiodothyronine are thyroid hormones. Transcortin, cortisol binding proteins. You know, for the transportation of corticosteroid hormones, cortisols, etc. Haptoglobin and hemopexin, transferrin, etc. are also important carriers. And you know that hemoglobin is actually heme plus globin. Globin is a protein component. It is present not in the plasma but inside the RBCs. Now we enter into the coagulation of blood. What is blood coagulation? In case of an injury, a leakage, that wound or that cut area should be closed, should be plugged to prevent further loss of blood. You know, blood means life. So, loss of blood means loss of life if you are not taken care of properly. And the body is to maintain hemostasis, which means no bleeding situation should be maintained. That is why blood clotting is a life-saving situation in many occasions. At the same time, unwanted clotting of blood inside the arteries and the veins should be prevented, and blood has the capacity for both. What happens in case of an injury? First of all, there is an aggregation of fibrin. You know that fibrin is formed from fibrinogen. Fibrinogen was soluble. When it is aggregating into fibrin, it becomes an insoluble network. And it covers the ruptured area, the wounded area, to prevent the loss of blood. Then you have the clumping of blood platelets. In this network, insoluble network, the blood platelets clump together. It forms a physical plug to stop the leakage. And then we have the vasoconstriction, reduction of the diameter of the blood vessel concerned in order to reduce the blood flow through that area. So these are the different activities. And you see here, ultimately, formation of fiber indicates blood coagulation. But this formation of fibrin from the fibrinogen, which is always present in the blood, is the result of a series of complex chemical activities. You can see here, there is a series of interconnected complex chemical activities which are ending with the cross-linking of insoluble fibrin network. And basically, a factor called factor 10A is to be produced. The different proteins and other factors concerned with the blood coagulation are given a number using Roman numerals. You can see here factor 12, factor 11, factor 8, 5, 10, like that. You can see different factors are there. And 10 is insoluble, this 5 is insoluble, I mean inactive, not insoluble, inactive. 12 is inactive, 11 is inactive, 9 is inactive. You see in this figure, all the factors shown in the blue color are inactive. They are always present in the blood or in the concerned area. When there is an injury, they are activated. In this diagram, whichever factor you see in the yellow color are the active forms. For example, extrinsic pathway tissue damages release tissue factor, it is active. This tissue factor is activating factor 7 into 7A. 7 is inactive, 7A is active, like that. So the inactive material molecule is activated into active molecule. Okay. So all these inactive molecules or factors are already present in the blood. But still coagulation does not take place. Why? They are not activated. They are activated, they become functional only upon an injury. This is how the body is regulating that blood coagulation is taking place only when it is required and only where it is required. So cross-linking of fibrin is actually blood coagulation. It is taking place when prothrombin 2 is converted into thrombin 2A by means of factor 10A along with the factor 5A and PL. PL is phospholipids. You can see it here, phospholipids, and also calcium 2 plus ions. So factor 10 was already inactive. Upon an injury, factor 10 is activated into 10A. This 10A is converting inactive prothrombin into active thrombin with the help of factor 5A and phospholipids and calcium ions. Now, how is this factor 10A being produced from factor 10? There are two pathways. One is, you can see here, intrinsic pathway, which you see here, intrinsic pathway. The other one is called extrinsic pathway. There are two different pathways which ultimately convert factor 10 inactive into factor 10A active. So intrinsic pathway and extrinsic pathways are two pathways, independent pathways responsible for the conversion of factor 10 into 10A. Once 10A is formed, there is only a single pathway. You see here, What about intrinsic pathway for blood coagulation? It is beginning with the surface contact. Surface contact with the, we are going to see in the following slides. And you see here PK. What is PK? It is actually pre-kallikrein. PK is converted into K. And what is K? K is not vitamin K. Vitamin K is involved, but this is not vitamin K. This is, you see here, kallikrein. This K is converting 12 into 12A, 9 into 9, 11 into 11A. 11A is converting factor 9 into 9A. This is actually not correct. It should be factor 9. Factor 11A is converting factor 9 into 9A, and 9A is converting factor 8 into 8A. So this factor 9A along with the factor 8A and the phospholipids and the calcium ions is converting 10 into 10A. That is the intrinsic pathway. And here you can see tissue factors which are released by the damaged tissues are converting factor 7 into 7A. It is then converting 10 into 10A active by means of phospholipid and with the help of phospholipids and the calcium ions. Okay, so once prothrombin is converted into thrombin, this thrombin is converting fibrinogen into fibrin, and this thrombin also will convert factor 13 into 13A. That 13A is required for the conversion of fibrin into that network, insoluble network of fibrin. I think this diagram is very clear. You see, clot formation initially follows two separate pathways. We found intrinsic and extrinsic pathways. They result in the formation of 10A. Thereafter, there is only a single pathway. Whether intrinsic or extrinsic, the process of blood coagulation is initiated always on the membrane. In the blood vessel, you know, we have membranes. Inside the blood vessel, we have the membranes. And is continued on the membrane surface at the site of injury. Keep this idea in your mind. The term intrinsic pathway was given from the observation that blood clotting would occur spontaneously when the blood is placed in clean glass test tube. So even if the blood is kept out of the body, still the blood can coagulate. That means some factors present in the blood are sufficient to cause this blood coagulation. Later it was known that some anionic surfaces are required, and this glass test tube, the glass surface is providing the anionic surfaces. Upon the surface, nucleation occurs. Nucleation means, you know, formation, accumulation of those protein factors occurs, and it is leading to blood coagulation. That's why in the clinical laboratories, you might have seen that when the technician is removing our blood for analysis, when the blood is transferred into a test tube, immediately she is doing something in it to prevent coagulation. Oxalate, etc. may be added. If oxalate is added to that blood, it will remove the calcium ions in the blood, thereby preventing coagulation. In mammals, anionic surfaces are exposed upon the rupture of the endothelial lining of the blood vessels. So, by the breakage of the endothelial lining of the blood vessel, anionic surfaces are provided upon which these specific blood coagulation factors are nucleating and the pathway is beginning. And the term extrinsic pathway came from the observation that some other factors outside the circulating blood are there which facilitate blood clotting. This factor was later identified as tissue factor or factor 3. Now let us see the reactions of intrinsic pathway in another slide.